On Christmas Eve 2010 in Longview, Texas, the streets are quiet, lit by porch lights and the soft glow of holiday decorations. Just outside a modest two-story home, a woman sits in her car, parked in the driveway. Her name is Lori Erica Ruff, but by the next morning, Lori would be dead. And what she left behind would send shockwaves through her family, the FBI, and forensic investigators across the country. This is Legends May Live, Drew, and today we're unwrapping the curious case of Lori Erica Ruff. When Lori had entered the lives of the Ruff family in the early 2000s, she seemed at first glance just like anyone else. She was quiet, polite, and even a bit reserved. She had met the son, Blake Ruff, through church in Dallas. Blake came from a well-off and respected family, the kind that had money, property, and a good name in town. Blake and Lori fell for one another hard and fast. They got engaged after only knowing one another for a few months, and then the two were married in 2004 in a small private ceremony. And though Blake had dozens of relatives and friends there to witness this joyous occasion and give their congratulations, along with cheesy advice like, happy wife, happy life, there was no one there for Lori. No friends and no family. Of course, Blake and his family found this pretty strange, but when Blake asked about it, Lori just kind of gave this vague answer and got really defensive. She said she was estranged from her family and that the past was painful, and she really didn't want to talk about it, so trying to be sensitive to his new wife, Blake just dropped the topic and the two enjoyed the rest of the reception. But as time went on, the topic of Lori's past would creep back up, and initially Blake was sure she had told him that she was from Arizona, but later she would say it was California, and her story shifted from time to time, but for the most part, Blake really didn't press. He just thought, Lori's guarded, sure, but everybody has a past, and not everyone's proud of theirs. He found it best to just keep on respecting her boundaries, loving her through whatever scars she didn't want to talk about, and eventually she would feel comfortable enough to talk about it. But the boundaries kept growing. She wouldn't talk about her childhood at all. Not even what high school she went to, and she kept family photos hidden, and when Blake's parents asked about her background, she would get so defensive and just to the point of being angry about it. And soon, she wasn't just secretive, she was becoming controlling. She installed multiple deadlocks and surveillance systems around the house. She didn't want visitors, and she didn't trust doctors or therapists or even extended family. Her paranoia just deepened over the years. And while Blake loved her, this was really getting out of hand. But in 2008, she gave birth to a baby girl. And for a time, things seemed better, but Blake's family had grown more and more uncomfortable, and his mother especially felt that something just was not right. And Lori's anger could flare without warning. Her paranoia just kept getting worse, and she became more possessive of her daughter and more distant from her husband. The walls she built around herself just were not coming down. They were getting taller, if anything. But then came the breaking point. It had just got to this absurd level, and Lori refused counseling for years, so finally, in 2010, Blake filed for divorce. And as you can imagine, the proceedings were ugly. Custody became a battleground, and Lori, this woman with no past, began to just unravel. She wrote long, disjointed emails to the judge, filled with accusations and just nonsensical claims, like she tried to stop Blake's parents from seeing their grandchild, and Lori was just descending further and further into madness. And no one could figure out why. Everyone had been nothing but supportive and just kind to her for years. But it seemed that nothing anyone could do would ever break through whatever shell Lori had put up. It really only made things worse. So by Christmas Eve of 2010, the divorce was final. She had lost custody of her daughter, and in the early hours of that cold December morning, she wrote a pair of notes, one to Blake and one to her child. And then she walked out to her car, she got in, drove to her ex-in-law's house, pulled in the driveway, put the car in park. Then she locked the doors, reached over to the passenger seat, and grabbed the shotgun she had sat there. She put it to her head, took a deep breath, and then pulled the trigger. As if that wasn't shocking enough, what came next would further leave everyone stunned. Because inside her home, tucked in the back of a closet, was a locked strongbox, and inside it was the key to a double life that no one, not even Blake, had seen coming. In the aftermath of Lori's death, her ex-husband and his family were left with more questions than closure. Who was this woman who had become such a big part of their lives? And why had she guarded her past so fiercely? In the coming days, Blake had her cremated, and though they weren't on the best of terms, he and his family mourned her passing. And because Lori died by suicide, and because the child was still a minor, Blake, as her legal guardian and Lori's ex-husband, became the most appropriate person to manage her affairs, especially as they related to the child. So Blake enlisted his parents to help, and they began clearing out Lori's old home and trying to figure out what to do next. And as they shifted through her belongings, they found the really unusual things. So they found clothes, old mail, a few family photos, but in the back of the closet, buried behind boxes of baby clothes and paperbacks, they found something truly unexpected. A heavy metal lockbox. It was the kind of box that, someone who really doesn't want anyone seeing what's inside would keep. And it took hours of working with drills, a hammer, and crowbar to finally get this thing open. But when they did, what they found was like something out of a movie. Inside were dozens of legal documents, all of which Lori had apparently used over the years. All with different names, different social security numbers, and photocopies of birth certificates, old IDs, scribbled notes filled with weird phrases and half-finished thoughts. One of those IDs carried the name Becky Sue Turner, and that name changed everything, because a quick background check revealed the truth. Becky Sue Turner was a real person. She was a little girl who had died in a house fire in Washington State in 1971. She was just 2 years old. Lori, or whoever she was, had stolen the identity of a deceased child to begin her new life. From there, she had created another identity, a new name, a new birth date, fabricated backstory, and that name was Lori Erica Kennedy, and later, Lori Erica Ruff when she would be married. She had buried her tracks so well that not even Blake, the man who married her and lived with her and fathered her child, not even he had expected the level of deception. But the contents of that box didn't stop at fake IDs. There were many handwritten notes and scribbled messages. One line read, "The name you seek is not known." Another, 402 months, paid in full. What did that mean? Was that prison time? A countdown? Or something as simple as a loan payment schedule? There were references to places in California and Idaho, post office boxes in different states, mentions of mob connections, strange religious statements, and vague, almost delusional scribblings that investigators would struggle to interpret. It was clear that Lori hadn't just assumed a false identity. She had constructed an entire life from scratch, meticulously, obsessively, and with the kind of care that only someone truly afraid of being found would take. But found by who? Soon the FBI was brought in to investigate, and the Social Security Administration opened an inquiry. Her fingerprints were run through every available database, but they came up with nothing of interest. They weren't tied to any criminal record or military history. But most surprising is that they didn't match any missing persons file either. It was like she had appeared out of thin air in the 1980s, and then just as carefully disappeared into someone else. But there was one last lead, one hope of finding out who this woman truly was, beyond the aliases and beyond the fake names. And that person was her daughter. Since Lori had been cremated, and with no known family, her daughter was the best shot at any clarity into who Lori really was because she shared the DNA. So for years, Lori Erica Ruff remained a mystery with no origin. The lockbox revealed she had lived under at least 2 fake names and possibly more. The documents inside hinted at a woman who was either running from something or perhaps deeply mentally unwell, or maybe even both. But there was still one unexplored avenue, one silent witness who might hold the key to Lori's true identity. In 2013, forensic genealogists working alongside the Social Security Administration and the Center for Human Identification began the process of extracting usable DNA. Sure, it wasn't Lori's directly, but her daughter's DNA carried half of her genetic code. And maybe it was a long shot, but this wasn't the early 2000s anymore. By this time, Ancestry DNA and 23andMe and many other public genetic databases started helping solve cold cases once thought impossible. The process was slow. It took nearly 3 years, analyzing chromosomes, building hypothetical family trees, matching distant relatives through shared markers. But finally, there was a hit. A woman named Kimberly, who had vanished in the 1980s. Her name was Kimberly Maria McLean. She was born in Philadelphia in 1968. She had run away from home at 18 following intense conflict with her parents. There was no police report or missing persons case. She was legally an adult and the family had assumed she didn't want to be found. But Kimberly never reached out again, and as far as the outside world was concerned, she just ceased to exist. Until now, Lori Erica Ruff was Kimberly McLean. It was a revelation that came without closure that anyone had hoped for. There was no evidence of a crime or signs that she had been abused or trafficked, no indication that she had hurt anyone or was in danger herself. She had just left. She ran from her life, erased her identity, and built a new one. And as far as we could tell, it's not for money and not to hide from the law or even deceive for gain, but just to disappear. For more than 20 years, she managed to fool everyone, from government agencies to her own husband. She had a child she lived, she loved, she hurt, and all behind a mask. And then, when it all began to crack, she chose to leave the world the same way she'd entered it, without a trace. But how did she do it? And where was she hiding for almost 18 years between running away and meeting Blake? Kimberly Maria McLean ran away from home in 1986. She was 18, and after that, nothing. No one ever saw her again. Not her mother, her siblings, or not even a single friend from childhood. She just erased herself, methodically, completely, without a single legal misstep that would have raised a flag. And for decades, she lived as someone else. Not as a criminal, not as a con artist, just someone trying desperately not to be found as far as we know. It seems that she didn't want money, and certainly not fame. She wanted to disappear, to be less than a blip on the radar. But the thing about secrets is that they have a weight, and over time that weight can crush a person from the inside out. We'll never know why Kimberly, Lori, or whoever she was, left the life she was born into. Maybe there's a darker story behind it all that we still don't know. Maybe it was for fear, trauma, or just mental illness that she battled all alone. It's possible she was running from something horrible, or just trying to escape a version of herself she couldn't stand. The lockbox didn't give us answers. The DNA gave us a name, but no one, not even those closest to her, ever really knew the woman behind the lie. And maybe that was the point. We live in a world where it's harder than ever to vanish. But Lori Ruff did it for over 2 decades. She built a fortress of silence around herself. And when that silence began to crumble, she chose to leave this world before the truth could fully emerge. But the truth is out there now, and her name is no longer a question mark. But her story, the why behind it all, we may never see fully complete. This was the curious case of Lori Erica Ruff, a woman who erased her past so well she almost erased herself. You've been listening to Legends May Live, where we explore the strange, the mysterious, and the downright eerie. I'm Drew. Until next time, don't believe everything you see, and question everything you think you know.